Well, we lost by 1 goal to Bayern Munich again, and that must mean we're here at CADS HQ waiting for the forecast from the world's most famous grumpy Spurs fans, Charlie, A and Ash, who's about to tell us how much to expect from the season ahead. So welcome back to CADS, and let's get started. Gentlemen, how are you? How is everyone doing?
Better.
Welcome back, Charlie. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's good to be back. It's good to be back. How you doing, boys? Everyone's still intact?
I'm hot. It's hot. In the middle of a
Well,
heat wave here in Paris. So, yeah, warm.
Not prepared.
Yeah, you go, Ash. I'll speak after you. Sorry.
I'm just saying they're not prepared for it over there. What he was telling about how hot it is. I'm going, well, that's kind of summer in LA.
Yeah, it's normal for
Yeah.
you. We don't do air conditioning here, though. So,
Yeah. Well, we were negatives last week, and it's 27 degrees today. So
Oh,
positive Celsius.
sounds
I just
perfect. All right.
Switched it to today. But otherwise, all good. Yeah, let's talk about Spurs.
Yeah,
be
let's talk.
positive. Let's
Well,
be
let's
excited.
try. There'll be some positives. There'll be some negatives. Let's all just try and live with what comes along. I don't want to dwell too long on the Bayern Munich game, but I know there's stuff that came out of it that people do want to talk about. So, a week after losing to Bayern Munich by a single goal, we lost to Bayern Munich by a single goal. As it the difference of a goal. People being quite negative about it, I feel. But when our best team was on the pitch, or our best defence was on the pitch, I felt we handled things fairly well and looked reasonably good. Kulusevski, as ever, looked very good up front and scored a couple of nice goals. We had some good stuff from the youngsters, which seems to be the story for this pre-season. And I really can't be too negative about it. Where am I going wrong, everybody?
well, I mean, I think that the source of negativity is because of the transfer market more than anything else. I think you could be forgiven if if we had the same result and had three players through the game. I think, the summer really it sort of sinks or swims on the transfer policy and how people feel like the team has been improved. And I think that I wouldn't say there are promises given to the fan base and the club at large about I think it's broken promises because I do feel like there will be more incomings. I just feel at this point that we were told that there was Johan Lange was concocting with Ange and with Daniel Levy a transfer policy way back in January, and that is a very, I mean, what kind of transfer policy is that when you're a week away from the start of the season? You've really, I mean, apart from Archie Gray, which seemed to me to be a little bit of an impulse buy or an opportunist strike when Brentford sort of couldn't figure it out. If it wasn't for Archie Gray, who was a tremendous player, and we'll obviously get onto the youngsters at some point, and Lucas Bergvall, who we already knew was coming in, it has been underwhelming. And my only negativity here is that I really, really hope that Ange gets the time he needs to implement fully the kind of squad that it will bring on, the kind of squad that he needs for his type of play before the inevitable backlash for potentially not having a somewhat of an overhaul of the squad happens around November time. I mean, we've been here before, and that would be my fear is that Ange will be the fall guy. If I'm just assuming he wanted more people through the door at this point. I can't imagine that he wouldn't want more people. Like, our front line does not look sharp. You can talk about Kulusevski being, this sort of reformed player, but I'm not quite sure how he fits in, to the grand scheme of things at this point. Given Ange's comments yesterday about him and I am concerned. I am concerned about that, and I don't see Solanke necessarily solving all those problems right now. I feel like we have bigger problems at 10 and on the wings that need addressing before the start of the season, before that negativity sort of gets quelled somewhat.
I think the wings is probably, well, one of the wings, as I said in a previous podcast, is probably the area where we can make the biggest single influence on the rest of the side. We've bought the number 9 now. You know, as I said, the guy up front and the guy on the right wing are going to be the ones that make the real difference. We've got Sonny for the left. We've got Werner for the left as well. And as a third case backup, we've got Mikey Moore as well now, who seems to be a first-team player and has played most of his time in the under-18s over on the left, even though he's right-footed.
Stu, I'm just going to do this right now, just to bring the Mikey Moore thing in. Sorry to interrupt. Do you feel like that part of that transfer strategy that was sort of spoken about in January was that we have this fleet of youngsters coming through, and this will be the season where we blood them and then almost build around that? Do you think that was part of the strategy? Or because Mikey Moore, you're right, looks better to me than Brennan Johnson right now. And do you think that, you know, having 3 right wingers, if we brought in, let's just say we brought in a Neto, I know he's gone to Chelsea, but someone in that ilk, do you think that would be at this, you know, do you think Mikey Moore would still have a place in the squad if they had brought a Neto in?
I think Mikey Moore is our left wing long-term guy. I don't think Werner will be signed
right wing,
season. Eh? No, left wing. He's played most of his time on the left in the
Mikey Moore's left.
Yeah. He's been playing right wing for us in pre-season games, but in under 18s, under 16s, under 15s, most of the time he's been playing wide left or number 10, or has also played wide right as well.
So for Ange, he's a right winger.
Left winger, I think.
Because
long term, his plan is to play him left wing. And I think they've looked at this squad and said, right, we've got a player who's aging out, and however much I love Sonny, he is aging out. He's going to be, in 2 years' time, he's going to be wanting to be a rotation guy. He's going to want to be a substitute. He's going to want to be an impact sub. He's not going to have the legs to be every single game, all the pressure, all the time. So I don't think we're buying Werner, because I think that would just harm the progress of Mikey Moore. I think there is a long-term plan in place for young Mikey Moore, which has been in place for quite some time now. There were a lot of clubs chasing him when he was 15. And apparently, at that time, he was made a very, very good offer. And I would suspect, if you've got a player who's supposedly that good, you're going to sit down with him and say, right, this is your path into the first team. You play out on the left. We are going to slide you into that position. We will bled you into the squad. As soon as you turn 16, you'll start to become a member of the first team. And I think he would have featured more last season if he hadn't been injured. And as you get into your 17th year, then you're going to start to get some first team experience, some proper first team appearances. And then eventually that left wing spot is yours to make your own. So I think it's interesting that we've signed Yang Min Hyung, who plays out on the right. And I think he's going to be our long-term right wing player. But I think still we need someone who's going to come in and make an immediate difference for that right-hand side.
Charlie made an interesting point there that I've been thinking about as well, is that the transfer policy, does it actually involve actually building around these young guys? And it may well indeed. And I'd actually be happy with that, because I don't have great expectations for this season. I would just like to see us incorporate these kids and look good at times look great, be entertaining. I'm not thinking even Champions League qualification this right now. I'd like to see these young kids. It may well be, we don't know, that is part of the policy. I've often said, well, if we got an academy, if we have these young guys, why don't we use them? And it's just kind of silly. I mentioned a couple of weeks, I don't think it aired, that in the NFL, they have these taxi squads. And the taxi squads are guys who actually play. They pay them. They train with the first team, and when somebody gets injured, they just bring them in. They're there to be played.
Oh, we're losing you a little bit, Ash.
Fiber attack.
So, I mean, we have talked about it in the past, but I don't think we're in a position. In the past, but I think. Oh, getting some feedback now. I don't think we're in a position where we're going to be seeing lots and lots of young players coming through, with the hope that in the next few years, Ange will be able to build the squad around them. Because I don't think Ange has the next few years left at the club. He's got a 3-year contract. He's in the second year of his 3-year contract. He generally doesn't do more than 3 years at a club. And the second year is normally the big year at the club. So I think he's going to try and make something happen this year and maybe do next year. But I think that'll probably be it after that. Then he'll be looking to move on again and do something else, because that seems to be what he does.
It seems to me to be a real... I hate to say this, but it harks back to the seasons, the transfer windows when Poch was in charge, where we had 2 barren transfer seasons, windows, and it was because of the quality of what we saw on display in the season before that I feel that call was made. And I know Poch would fall on the sword there, and he said if he wanted players in, he would have got players in. I don't buy that necessarily. I just feel like he's the front man for the wider transfer policy, you know. And I don't know, and this is pure speculation, but the kids have played so well, and they're so eager, and they've been playing so well this pre-season. Is all we're really talking about. I mean, some of the senior players like Basuma, certainly Maddison, have really sort of not. It's a pre-season. We have to sort of keep that in mind. And when the stakes are higher, of course, these guys will up their game. But you know, I do feel that maybe looking at the kids this pre-season, they have equipped themselves pretty well to you know, the trials that have been put in front of them. And I would hate to think that is in the back of someone like Daniel Levy's mind when he's sort of strategizing for the, you know, the season to come.
Oh, somebody got it on speakers.
And
I think it's Dash.
and there's almost decided that you know, these guys are ready now, and it's also going to say their value is going to increase through the season, next couple of seasons, and we're going to save a bunch of money right now. Like that would be my you know, my bigger concern as to why we haven't seen more in the transfer window right now, is because they are planning to blood these youngsters.
Okay, let's take it back, right? First 10 games last season. Then we lost Van der Ven, Madison, who Sonny had to play up front because of Charleston's permanently crocked. Or a lot of the time. When he played well. We didn't have cover for left back and right back. And if you look at that and you consider that we are generally we're building a team that's kind of greater than the sum of its parts. And then you say, okay, we paid a lot for a guy up front who's supposedly going to hold the ball better, can put it away, the chances that he gets. Maybe he's not super prolific, but that also assists in our numbers that we concede because we turn over so much, right? So is that one thing? Then there's a boy that we sent out on loan to a country that we generally look for to buy from. Dragusun has come from there. Vicario's come from there. Udogi's come from there. And then we see that, you know what, we're short on fullbacks, and there's somebody that we actually own. If we didn't have him, we'd be looking at him now. And then you have him. You have a generational talent in Moore, and you bring Bergvall in to cover for Madison. Yes, they're young and and we don't expect them to be amazing right away, but all of a sudden there's a whole lot more options to play the way the coach wants to than he had last year. There's just one missing really, and that's a replacement or somebody who can push Basuma. Because we brought in the Van de Ven cover, or one of the centre backs cover with Davies. We've got Gray and Spence, who can do a lot better job on the left back, right back than our other two covers that we had previously, with Emerson leaving. We have a creative midfielder, we have a right winger, and now we have another focal point up front that hopefully also pushes Richie to bigger heights. So I don't know if they've just stumbled on this. I would love to think that this was the plan and it was structured all along. But I don't think it's as bad as we think it is. Sure, I'd love us to be better, but you kind of get conditioned to Spurs not pushing the boat out. Should we have? Probably. But I think squad-wise, we're in a better position than we were.
In terms of the number 6, I think we're looking at Bentancur to play in that position. And if Bentancur can come back anything close to what he was before that initial Aston Villa injury, he would be fantastic. He's a great player, despite his recent issues, which have been well publicised and discussed many times. So I'd love to see him get back to that level. I really hope he doesn't end up with a ban, but I suspect he may end up with one, which could see him out for a little bit of time, a few weeks, maybe a few months even.
What he said about Sonny.
There was the thing about Sonny, and then there was chucking 2 glass bottles into the crowd after the game against Colombia.
Yeah, it was the aftermath of the copper.
Yeah. So
well, I'd like to see what happens.
Going to go badly.
It'll just be our luck that Darwin Núñez doesn't get a ban and Bentancur gets a ban, right? That's probably what's going to happen.
Darwin Núñez, if Bentancur gets a ban, Darwin Núñez will also get a ban. I mean, you don't get to do what he did, as Eric Dyer found out, and get away with it. So that's going to happen. How the sides cope is basically how it is. But I still keep looking at it. I still think we need at least 2 signings before we can close out the rest of the transfer window. I think we need a right winger. I think we need a left back, someone that can push or stand in for Udogie. Because without those 2 players, I think the squad is light in the areas we need it to be somewhat stronger.
Mm-hmm.
Can we talk about 2 of those players? The one you just mentioned, right wing Johnson, and also Maddison as well. What do we think about why aren't those guys rising to the occasion? It is preseason, but that was happening at the end of last season as well. Can we expect Maddison to get back to what he was doing in the first 10 games, or is he going to be? I think Stu, you've mentioned this in the past. That's his sort of road to be great for a bunch of games, then get injured, and then come back and not be so great. And then with Johnson, why do we spend that much money for somebody who doesn't seem that hungry? I don't know. Maybe he is. It doesn't seem. Those are two key positions: the right wing for sure, Stu, and then our midfield guy. Hey, by the way, will Bergvall start over Maddison? Will Ange have the balls to play somebody like him over Maddison?
I think Maddison might be quite motivated to play against Leicester. He might quite enjoy that. Bergvall certainly is the long-term position. That's where he's going to end up, I feel. He did very well against Bayern Munich, came on, hassled Harry, made a goal for Kulusevski. And I just love it. I think he's great. I think he's a really good player and amazingly good at such a young age, frankly.
Yeah, I think he'll come on second half against tired legs, especially at the start of the season. Give him a little bit more space to build his confidence up.
In regards to Johnson, I think Johnson is a reasonably limited player who's good at what he does. but it is reasonably limited. I don't see him having the ability to commit people and go past them and be amazing, be eye-catching. But I think he is the kind of guy who will get goals, he will get assists, and you look at his numbers last season, they're actually really impressive. But he's just not the eye-catching player that we probably want him to be. So Neto is a great player, but he's injured constantly. So why would we have spent so much money on a player who's that injured all the time? It would just be asking for trouble.
Didn't.
So we didn't. Well, apparently we offered a chunk of money and Ollie Skip. But why would we push the boat out? And we didn't. Chelsea can have him. Chelsea can have the problems, and they can add him to their list of 41 other players. And I'm not joking. They've got 42 players in their first team squad. Apparently it was bad last summer with Pochettino because they had something like 30-odd players, and they had players who were getting changed in the corridors. So what are they going to be doing now? They'll be like changing in the canteen.
Sunday league.
Yeah. But who would everybody bring in? Money, no object. Right winger. Who's going to be your first choice?
Money, no object. Right winger.
Anyone got any ideas?
For what?
To bring in to play right wing.
I struggle to think of anyone. Eze is more a central player that can play other positions. I'd like to see us get Eze because it gives us options. But I think we need a 6 and we need a right winger. That's what I was coming up to. And if they're doing this data-led stuff, and that's what's prompting them to spend the money, then I'll back whoever they have. Johnson, the purchase tells me that they weren't looking for a dribbling winger because he's not a dribbling winger. And if you look at who we've gone for, this, it seems like we've just decided that that's not what's going to work in this team. Given our tradition and our history, it's a bit sad. You want that off your guys that get you off your seat and go past people. I don't think they want it. We're crying out for it because you want options, right? And yeah, we're trying to look at options of multiple players that can fit multiple areas, but surely at some point you want somebody that can go past people and stretch defenses. I like Johnson. I like what he does. But I don't think he'll ever be able to be that guy that beats a man. I think that's something that comes at a really young age, in your early teens and younger. And if you don't have it, it's not something you can coach, in my opinion, that natural flair. But their selection policy tells me that they're not looking for it. So I think a 6 and a right winger or Eze. That's where I'm at. Yeah.
I think with
Eze... No, go on, Charlie.
Go on, please tell me about Eze, because I have to say I didn't see too much Crystal Palace last year. I mean, at least they would have been the absolute. I mean, he was the one that I personally wanted for that, and obviously and actually João Palhinha as well. I mean, those two players were such. You think they were going under the radar, kind of, maybe not so much Elise, but João Palhinha certainly, like, until he wasn't, and then suddenly someone like Bayern jump in, he really was. Elise as well. I mean, he was working his magic on the wing last year. So, if you'd asked me like sort of three months ago, it would have been those two. And I'm not quite sure necessarily if we are 100% in for a right winger. I think obviously we had a bid rejected for Neto, and there may be a backup option. I think some people are talking about Bakayoko. I think I got his name right. Maybe someone can correct me. Just taking Andrew's comments yesterday for what they were. I think Solanke is going to sort of reorder that front three and actually make it look a lot more potent. I don't think that Ange is 100% convinced on Kulusevski playing a central role, even though probably widely the fan base are. Just given what he said yesterday, he's either got to play 10 at this point. I suppose you can play a false nine and a nine at the same time, and I would love to see that. But I believe that Kulusevski is still probably a right winger in his thoughts. And if I was to pick a team, I'd stick Johnson on the bench and bring him on with those 25 minutes to go, where he has been so good. And he may have cost us 50 million, but at some point you've got to look at where these players really do their best work. And I seem to remember Johnson being very, very potent off the bench. And I really, really hope that that's where he stays. I'm not saying that because I don't think he's worthy of a spot. I just think he's very, very good off the bench. And I think that gives us an extra dimension when we are, chasing games. Hopefully, we're not doing that too much this season. But the interesting thing for me is that 10 role as always. Maddison hasn't made it his own. Let's be fair. And I don't know what's going on with Maddison. I think it's more psychological than simply a dip in form, which you could argue is what a dip in form is. It's all psychological, but it's been a while since he's had a good game. Let's be honest about that. He is obviously the man in the changing room. He was the one that greeted Solanke hardest. Like, he is obviously a lovely guy. He's always signing things for kids, and I love that part of him. Don't get me wrong. I just think he absolutely, everyone's talking about it, and we were talking about it, deep into last season, but that is our problem position in my opinion. We've got two tens in Gio as well who aren't up to scratch. And Kulusevski has been the one who looks most potent in that role. So I would love to see a right winger come in. I would love to see Kulusevski drop into that 10 position, because I think Bergwall, I don't know if he's a 10. I don't know if he's 10 yet. But he's certainly pushing for that position. We have good options there. And again, I don't necessarily think that, unfortunately, that the 10 is something. I have to say I'd sell Maddison at this point if we got a decent price for him, and I would bring someone else in, and obviously Gio as well. That whole position it's not linking the attack and the defense like it should be right now, and that for me is my biggest concern in the team.
If we could get Eze, then I think James Maddison immediately becomes available, because I think Eze makes that spot his. He is just the quintessential perfect fit for the way that we want to play football and fill that spot. So,
and Stuart,
it'd be very difficult.
Towards the end of last season, I think it was Charlie, Ash, you and me, and we talked about who we'd like from the Premier League to fit into this team. I'm pretty sure all of us agreed on Paulinho. We liked Olise, one of Olise or Eze. But we didn't talk about Solanke, but there was the guy at Brighton that terrorizes us all the time. Was it Pedro?
Yeah.
Another Ferguson. Is it João Pedro? There's a striker in one of the loans. Yeah, that I thought would fit for us. Kind of agree with Charlie that we need more up front, and we need guys up front that's going to hold the ball a little bit better. Madison's very instinctive, and he does some amazing things, but sometimes trying to do that, we lose the ball very quickly, and then the pressure's really much on us. I'm hopeful he does really well this year, and maybe getting in somebody like Eze would push both of them to new heights. Part of me thinks that the reason we're not going for these out-and-out wingers is because we're going to have responsible players in those positions that are able to cover for Porro and Udogie to terrorize people going forward. And I wonder if that is part of the strategy. But that also only works if you have a very responsible six to mop up. And I don't think Basuma's that guy. And you know this, I've said this before. I think he's a flat track bully. And he has mental failures. and he doesn't seem to learn from it. So that's why I'm saying 6. I want someone to relegate Basuma to a bit part, and I think that would make a huge difference to the way we play. He looks great in good times, but bad, really bad in other times. So I think that's where I am. So yeah, it's a tough one. Yeah.
Hey, what do you think of? I mean, one very good player who came through the ranks last year, who we haven't really talked about much, and we don't really quite know his position, is Sarr. You know, whenever I think about the midfield, I don't know why I just forget that he's an option, because I'm not quite sure. For me, he would be the perfect. I mean, look at Man City, look at Arsenal's. They have a staple in that position. They're going to play every game this season. You know, you've got Rodri and Rice. That player you're talking about, is that player already in our ranks, or do we have a bunch of options that we may, you know, sort of try out? That's the problem with the midfield for me. There's no staple in that midfield. It's so fluid right now, and our biggest problem is linking I think is linking the defense to these sort of when people are pushing on our defense and we're playing through that press. We're not necessarily effectively transitioning that to our forward play, and I do think that you know, with you on that one, absolutely, that number 6 is an issue. My issue is that there is already 3 players vying for that position, and none of them are really sort of putting their hands up and going. My issue is that there is already 3 players vying for that position, and none of them are.
Yeah,
Sorry,
I agree with
that.
that.
None of them. Yeah.
I love Sarr. I don't think he's that staple though. I think he's that all-rounder, and he should be looking to get into the box with his athleticism. He scored a few goals and caused all sorts of problems early in the season because he's just so big and fast and athletic, and times he runs into the box. So in our old-ish team, if you like, I had him and Bentancur in the same position, but I didn't have that staple, and I think you said it way better than me, a lot more succinctly. We're missing that staple. We're missing that guy, and we thought Basuma was that guy, and that's what I'm coming back to. But I don't see Sarr in that position. I think Sarr is amazing. I love that kid playing in that team with a broad smile and massive energy, and I think he can do a lot of things. But he's the box-to-box all-rounder for me.
I'm going to throw one in here, guys. Just to throw something about amongst position. I genuinely believe that Archie Gray will be that player moving forward. But my issue with blooding both Bergvall and Archie Gray so early, and there was something about Dele Alli that was undroppable in the end. You know, he brought something that was completely unique to a team that was crying out for that position. And I think he came to us at 18 or 19, and it was very, very clear that Poch was. I think he tried him a couple of times off the bench, and then it was like, well, you're playing that guy now from the start. There was just no real doubts about it. If you ask people in Sweden about Bergvall, they're telling you that he'll be playing within 3 months. He'll be starting for Spurs. I'm just waiting for the feedback just to go. So they're telling you that Bergvall will start in that position, and I think as Spurs fans, we love that flair. We've seen a lot of him in pre-season, and we're very impressed. Similar with Gray, I would be shocked if our starting midfield does not include Bergvall and Gray by the time Christmas comes around. Unless Porro has an injury, I just can't see Gray not taking that number 6 position off Basuma at some point and making it his own, and then you won't see Basuma after that. And you just can't, when talent's on display like that, the Spurs fans will demand that they start, and that leaves people like Basuma, Maddison, and to some extent Bentancur with, you know, having to step up to the levels of 2 18-year-olds who have just come into the team. If I was just quickly, if I was Bergvall and I had the option of Barcelona, I come into Spurs, I would expect to have 2 or 3 senior players that I would look up to, and that I would push myself to and be inspired by and learn from. I don't think that's the case at Spurs right now. I think you've got two 18-year-olds who are better than the options that we have right now. And it's just a matter of getting over that whole thing that we got over very quickly with Dele Alli, which was this is a young player, but he deserves his place in the team. And take from that what you will. I'm a little bit disappointed in our senior players and how they have acquitted themselves in the past season to take those positions and make them their own. But injuries providing, I get it. But I just think that by Christmas you'll see Bergvall and Archie Gray in in the midfield as staples.
The only question I have about Archie Gray is his pressure resistance against the good teams, taking the ball with his back to goal. I think maybe that'll come in time, and maybe that's what they're waiting for to decide whether he'll be an 8 or a 6. He seems amazing when he has the game in front of him. And I think that's why they played him at centre back, because they wanted to see what he could do with the game in front of him. And I think the natural progression would be then to try and build up to see, okay, against teams that are quite aggressive, can he take the ball under pressure and then link the play? So that's the only question about it. I do agree with you about the other positions. I think up front, guys will obviously look up to Sonny, but not other positions. And I think we have Romero, who's amazing. But and I think they all look up for him. World Cup winner, Copa winner, serial winner, crazy guy, can ball play. But I don't know how long we hold on to him if we don't get CL this year. And that was the problem with me thinking about maybe we prepared to sacrifice the season, and we might be prepared to sacrifice Romero out of this team.
Yes.
And
I
people
completely agree with that, dude.
Yeah. So I think those are the two major leaders in terms of ability, and been there, done it with everything, Puskas winners, World Cup winner, Copa winner. There's not too many of those in our squad. And I agree with you wholeheartedly about that staple. And if we had to spend all our dough on one guy that's absolute statement signing for a number 6, I would do that. That leader, that Rodri in the middle of the field that brings everybody up with him, that everybody looks at and says, he's the best player in the team and you will follow him. Like they did with Musa, Dembele. Everybody said he was the absolute best player in the team. And when he was in the team, they felt secure. They felt confident enough to express themselves. And I think that is something that we are missing. So I'm a bit worried, actually. I would hate to see Romero go to any other team. And let's be honest, he can walk in at any other team in the world right now. So, yeah, that's our one player that can go anywhere and fit in with any team. And if we're thinking it, he's thinking it.
And his agent.
Well, I think Daniel Levy already, I think, put a £150 million price tag on his head when Real Madrid came sniffing earlier in the transfer season. But when he's got 2 years left in his contract next year, it's a different story. And I think, I would, again, we've been here before with Berbatov, we've been here with Modric, we've been here with Harry Kane. When you have that player, he's in demand, and the team isn't necessarily reflecting his ambitions. You're looking at, and again, this is again why I think there is negativity around the Spurs fan base with respect to the transfer window. If you want to keep players like Romero, then you absolutely have to show that intent, and we haven't shown that intent. These young players coming through may well have a blistering season, but they're not going to win the Champions League. Romero at this point, World Cup winner, double Copa winner, he's going to maybe even treble at this point. I think he's going to want that move, and I think that's I don't know how they're going to incorporate Dragusin. It's just a whole different conversation. To keep Dragusin, who was one of the standout performers in the Euros, happy. I do think that that's going to be a juggle for Ange this year to keep Dragusin happy and somehow keep hold of Romero, which I just think is a foregone conclusion at this point.
And we've got Vuskovic coming through next year as well, who is doing extremely well in Belgium by the sound of it. So, and was doing well in Poland before that. So there's plenty to come. I like Archie Gray. I really like Archie Gray. I think he's got a lovely touch on the ball. I love the way he plays with his head up. I'm a little bit concerned that when we've played players who have filled in defensive positions, so Skip and Archie Gray basically, when we've played them in their actual midfield positions, they've started making mistakes. Some mistakes have crept in during this pre-season. And I'm a little bit concerned that we can't really risk that happening during the season itself.
I think your errors are magnified in the center of the park compared to fullback.
Yeah,
Centre
Sarr
back,
as well had a few issues. So
yeah, they're going to have a few, especially with the way we want to play. Really
this
fast.
is the thing. I think
up-tempo.
with Ange's system, everything has to go right or get really close to being right. If we're off by more than a couple of percent, then there are issues and things break down, and suddenly we're getting turned over, and they're getting a chance to run straight at our back line because of the way we play so high. I wouldn't want Ange to change the way he plays, because that's what I enjoy watching in football right now. I enjoy watching that commitment to the attacking intent. But can be a little bit scary when it doesn't go right, and as shown by the Newcastle game last season.
As shown by numerous games
I
last.
think
But mostly by the Newcastle game last season.
Yeah. I think I think I've said this on here before. Like, you've got 11 players, and it's difficult to get an 11% increase by bringing one player in, but maybe you can improve everybody by 1%, and that's a lot easier. And that's what we're hoping for in the second season, right? Everybody's more familiar with the system, everybody's fitter, and then you bring in one or two things that was letting us down, and hope from there. I'm curious to see if what we've changed with our defensive coaching. I know I've seen that we've conceded a few from set piece already in the preseason, but I don't know how much you can take from that, because we've never really played a steady back four. It's always been fill-in players then, but those things are bound to happen. But I'll be curious to see how we handle that sort of stuff. And I think early in the season, based on what happened last season, a lot of teams will be trying to figure us out, or to see if we've made improvements there. So we should get our answer pretty quickly. I just hope that's improved a lot.
When we had Kuti and Van der Ven back in the central defence, we looked so much more secure. We weren't damaged from free kicks anymore, and they had a few. We just looked like we were communicating better. It looked like there was more leadership at the back, and it looked like people were getting picked up and things were getting done. I think when we're missing those guys, particularly Kuti at the back, I think we're lacking a talker. I really think we need to have someone who's going to step up and take that leadership role, whether that's Dragusin or whether that's going to be Ben Davies. I don't think it's going to be Ben Davies, because however much I like the guy, I don't think he's the authoritative voice that we probably need back there. And if they're not going to do it, Vicario needs to do it. And I think that is potentially an area where Vicario is a little bit weak. He's not the loudest goalkeeper.
I think we're a bigger team this year. Yeah, we should be better in the air. Dragusin is like a magnet for that headed ball, but if he's not in the team, that doesn't help us. But we've got some big guys in there. I would say for the big guy, I think Van der Ven can improve a lot in the air. But if you look at, you've got Solanke, who's a big guy. If you're playing Sarr, he's tall. Bergwell's no shrinking violet.
Gray's
Our
tall.
central defenders, Gray, Udogi, Spence,
Solanke as well.
Solanke. So I think like last season when we had to rotate. We ended up with a lot of guys that weren't so physically dominant in the air. They got bullied a bit in the air. A lot of cases that we were like, oh, the striker just out jump somebody, more than anything else. And hopefully that makes a difference this year. But I think there was still plenty of tactical stuff that needed to be done. And hopefully they worked on protecting Vicario a lot better. Maybe in the second season, some guys have developed not just physically or technically, but also understand what's required of them better. And maybe with that confidence comes more leadership. So I don't know. But yeah, Romero's the obvious one, right? Like we said, everybody looks up to him. And when he's not there, who's communicating? And I think that's what we need to figure out.
If I ever saw a team sheet, sorry, Stu, go ahead.
I think it's quite interesting what's been coming out from the players is it's fairly standard message of, Andrew's been here a year now. We all know what we're supposed to be doing in terms of the way we're going to play football. And now he's been able to get into more specifics of this position, that position, this is what we're going to be doing. The players seem to have bought into what he wants, and he's got to where he wanted to be by the end of year one. Now it's about making those fine-tuning little improvements that are going to make the difference in a game. But it's been a disruptive summer with Copa, Euros, and then the Olympics. So transfer windows have been disrupted. Players have started to move again. There's been some moves today. And I think we're going to start to see some big moves over the next week because people want to get their players in before the actual first major kickoff of the season starts.
Yeah, I have to say, like, Andrew's style reminds me a lot of this Bazball thing going on. You guys familiar with that concept, the Bazball thing happening in Test cricket?
No.
Yeah, it was an absolute breath of fresh air when we first saw